Hello everybody, and welcome back to a wonderful stream for the MLH Fellowship. Now today, we're going to be talking a little bit about how you can get started in your career and everything you can do to kind of make yourself stand out from the crowd. Today, I'm actually joined by our wonderful friend Robbie from AWS, who's going to share some of his experiences with how he got started working at AWS and some of the things that you could do to help you level yourself up to stand out from the crowd and help you get an awesome job when you finish your degree. We'll get into that in a second, but first things first, welcome everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Let me know in the chat how you're doing. We'll have a good conversation throughout the stream. Now, for those of you who are watching, you'll know that earlier in the week, we announced a brand new fellowship track. Yeah, I know, very spicy stuff. It's pretty exciting stuff. So we just launched the production engineering track for the MLH Fellowship this summer. So if you're interested in getting into DevOps, and it's something that maybe you're not overly familiar with, but you think it'd be really cool to get into, then you should totally check that out at fellowship.mlh.io. You can actually find out all the information you need there, and there's also a few blog posts you can find as well. But if you've ever considered a career in production engineering or DevOps, then it's the most in-demand skill at the time. Now, I don't know if you've never heard of DevOps, it can be a little bit confusing, a little bit, bizarre, but DevOps is actually really, really cool. DevOps and kind of site reliability are the awesome people behind making sure that these big online platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and so on are able to handle so many users all of the time, and they never have any downtime. It's very rare that you'd actually see something like Facebook or GitHub down for a long period of time. And it's because of all of these really cool techniques in DevOps, which allow them to kind of maintain, be able to have multiple services running. If one goes down, one goes up, being able to scale up, scale down, and so on. It's all really cool stuff. But even though it's a really important skill, it's not widely taught, surprisingly. And so we're teaming up with Facebook this summer to try and help educate as many people as we can. We've got slots for 100 people to come and spend their summer learning how all they need to get started in systems and DevOps, and how they could potentially start a career there. Now, if you've got any questions, do let me know in the Twitch chat. Looks like we've got a bunch of you watching along, which is awesome to see. But we're going to get my friend Robbie on. Hello, Robbie. How is it going?
Hello, Will. I'm doing very well, thanks. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. Now, Robbie, you have been some could say that you are part of the MLH alumni, and hackathons helped get you kind of geared up to where you are now. And so, yeah, if you could just quickly introduce yourself and what you do at Amazon, and what you get up to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Robbie. I'm from AWS, Amazon Web Services. I work there as a graduate consultant. So I'm working on helping customers and clients and businesses and organizations build their applications in the cloud or migrate to the cloud, stuff like that. And as Will said, I kind of got here because of all the work I've done with hackathons, all the hackathons I've been involved in, all that kind of stuff, to grow those soft skills, as we call them, in addition to just the technical ones. So I definitely wouldn't be where I am today without the work that MLH does and all that kind of wonderful stuff. It's interesting you were talking about production engineering, Will. A lot of the skills you're talking about with DevOps and things like that are stuff that I'm doing day to day as well in my role, where I'm talking about how can I make a system highly available, how can I make it scalable, reliable, all these kinds of things. And they're not really taught that much at university or school. It's kind of like throwing me in at the deep end a bit when I joined this job. So really a really great opportunity with the MLH Fellowship to learn those skills.
That does make a lot of sense because you work at AWS. And for those of you who actually, what is AWS and how is it kind of powers half the internet?
Yeah, that's a good question. AWS is, we're part of Amazon, right? And so we are cloud hosting for anything and everything that you need. Something like 4% of IT spend globally is on the cloud. So there's a huge amount of growth opportunity here. But it's really important that, we're working in this space so that businesses can, be forward thinking and we can help accelerate their outcomes. So we'll provide hosting. So rather than doing it on premise or something like that, you can do it within AWS using cloud native technologies, things like Lambda and S3 you may have heard of, EC2 and all this kind of stuff, just because it reduces that overhead of doing it yourself within a business. So we are a huge player in that space and certainly the largest one in terms of cloud.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so you may not even realize it, but cloud is used everywhere. It is all around us. And in the last like 10 years, it's been pretty common for companies to move from hosting stuff on servers and stuff inside of their own buildings to using these VMs in the cloud. In fact, fun fact for you all, I'm currently like finishing off my university project, and I've currently got it deployed on a Raspberry Pi. So I've technically got it deployed on premise. And I found out that they're going to mark my project when I'm moving house, so it won't be plugged in, so they won't be able to access. So I'm going to have to throw it on the cloud. Again, another reason why the cloud is quite useful in this scenario. And I'm going to look at putting it into a Docker container, which means I'll be able to very easily just move it into whatever VM, right? It's super easy just to kind of go, hello cloud, have my Docker container and make it work, rather than having to like get all the dependencies set up and making sure the environment's right, because we all know how much of a pain that is. But yeah.
You ever try to install like 2 different versions of Python, right? Like
yeah, exactly. It's like I just need my project to work. It's just a Flask app. It should be fairly easy to put in a container. Yeah. Famous last words. Now, Robbie, before you obviously became part of AWS, what previous experience did you have before you applied, and anything you would here kind of recommend for people to kind of like get their hands in before they graduate?
Yeah, I think there's 2 aspects to this, right? There's certainly the technical skills you need to develop. You know, I'm a graduate consultant. I didn't know a huge amount about AWS when I joined, because the idea is that you can learn all of that on the job, right? You can learn the technical skills. We'll give you training for the AWS certifications, this kind of stuff. But you need enough technical knowledge that you can kind of that you can handle that. So I did a placement year at university. So between my 2nd and 3rd year of study, I spent a year working as a PHP developer, which is more like full stack web dev than just PHP. You know, I was doing a lot of React and front end stuff as well. Probably more front end than back end, I would say. So that was a great opportunity for me to learn about what it's like just being in a business environment, in a working environment, which, as I'm sure you can appreciate, Will, is very different from just like university and classmates.
Yeah, definitely.
And then in addition to that, it was an opportunity for me to learn a lot about a lot of my technical skills, right? Like I would do hobby web development at home and at university, but when you're doing it in a job, like you've got to do it right. It's got to actually work, and you can't just have some excuse like, oh, it's kind of okay, it works on my machine.
The client's not going to be overly happy if if the code you wrote 2 months ago stops working because you just bodged it together. We've all been there, right? We've all done a hackathon, or like been in that scenario where you're like, I've got an hour left and this thing isn't quite working. Now I could do it the proper way, but it might take a little longer. Or I can hard code everything and bodge it together, and no one will ever know. And I think we all know which one we've been more persuaded towards, which is great for those scenarios, but not necessarily for the production environment.
If you ever go like on your GitHub profile and you find you pull up a hackathon project from a year ago, 2 years ago, try and boot it up, that thing is not going to boot up. You know, it's just the way it is. But obviously, that doesn't really, you can't really take that approach in a more professional environment. So yeah, you learn how to do things properly. I'll certainly say that, which is awesome. And the thing is, the skills and the technologies are always changing, right? Like even what I learned on my placement year, which was 2 years ago now, is not stuff that's super relevant today, right? Even PHP is on the way out anyway.
Rest in peace.
But whatever you learn, like within a couple of years, you've got to learn new stuff. Yeah. So it's good to get on that ladder now and kind of give yourself enough base knowledge with things like the Production Engineering Fellowship. And then that sets you up for success when you go on to learn new things. You're always learning new things in a career like this.
Yeah, definitely. We've got a few more people joining us in chat. Hello, how's it going? Going pretty well. I think we're vibing.
Canada. Nice.
Yeah, Canada, we love to see it. Now, if you're in Canada, again, I'm just going to pitch it again. People are going to be like, wow, we're just going to get the production engineering track in there any second you can. And you are absolutely right. That is exactly what I'm going to do. So for those of you who are in Canada, Mexico, and the US, you can get yourselves, you should definitely go and apply to the production engineering track for the MLH Fellowship this summer. I'd highly recommend it. It's open to students who are graduating after August 2022. I believe in America that means junior or sophomores, but I could be wrong. So definitely have a look. In the UK, I had this conversation with someone the other day where we did a live stream last week with Erin, and yeah, she had to educate me how that works, because I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I still don't know.
But one of the really cool things is we've got 100 seats, and we're going to get to use part of the Linux Foundation training and certification. So yeah, we super encourage people, especially those from underrepresented backgrounds, because DevOps and, this sort of kind of field is for anyone, and we'd love to see as many people as well get involved. Now, you don't need to be super familiar with programming to get involved, unlike maybe with the open source track or the software engineering track. So if you're only just getting started, maybe you've been to a few hackathons and you're looking to kind of maybe branch out into DevOps. And trust me, you don't need to have experience in DevOps. Like, don't feel like you need to understand Docker and deploying to the cloud. These are scary things, and that is the whole point of the program, is we're going to teach you those scary things so you'll be a professional at the end of it. Someone in chat says, I'm new to coding, only attended one. Love to see it. Way out there from South Asia. Love to see it. If you're from South Asia, then you should totally have a look at the software engineering and open source tracks. We've got some exciting partners. I'm not allowed to disclose them just yet, but we've got some exciting partners for the software engineering track for the summer. So definitely keep an eye out for those. Someone just said, wow, this sounds super helpful. Trust me, it is pretty exciting. I'm excited to get our hands on this program in the summer and help everyone level up. And the best bit as well is there is a guaranteed stipend of $3,600 for everyone who takes part in the production engineering track. There is also stipends available for the other tracks. You can find those out on the website. I don't remember the number directly off the top of my head, but again, you can find that information out on the website, fellowship.mlh.io. Now, I realized I did just talk a lot. I'm going to try and slow down the pace.
Isn't that you in a nutshell, Will?
Yeah, I do talk very quickly. Yeah, if you got any questions about the production engineering track, do let me know in chat. I'll be answering those. And I'm going to be asking Robbie a few questions about his experience. It's kind of convenient I've got you here today because you kind of work in production engineering, sort of.
Yeah, I realized I kind of do. I didn't really think about it like that.
I hadn't really put two and two together. I was more looking at the whole you've started your career. We can get some useful information for everyone there. Would production engineering ever be available in APAC region? So I actually got asked this question yesterday by a few of our current fellows, and as the fellowship is still quite new, it's not even a year old yet. Not even a year old.
That's crazy.
I know, right? I remember I was talking to Swift on the day it got launched, and it was just after I got hired by MLH, which was, I think, a year ago today, actually. Nice. Yeah, the fellowship hadn't even been announced like a year ago. That's how new it is. And so as we grow the fellowship and as we expand, we plan to try and make it as easy as possible to have as many people all over the world. There are definitely some issues there. It's difficult to sometimes with employment, kind of like country laws and stuff, but as our team grows and as our experience grows, we want to try and support as many students as possible. But don't fret, just because you can't do production engineering now doesn't mean you can't take part in the fellowship. Open source is open to almost everywhere in the world, and people on open source learn so much. They get to contribute to cool projects like React Native, Jest, Flask, the list goes on, and they get to get their hands on with, they get to work with maintainers, they get to work with mentors, and so on. Then software engineering is a similar sort of idea, but people get to work with folks who are working on, kind of internal company projects. And so in the past, we've worked with companies like Macro, we work with Ensign, and people have worked on some really cool stuff. Macro is actually a Zoom client. Actually really cool. I've been using it recently, and we've had a few of the fellows working on one of their new clients. So that's been pretty exciting too. Someone asks what happened to the Explorer track. So the Explorer track is being postponed just for the time being. However, we do plan to bring it back in the summer. You can find out some information on the website. We'll have a mailing list set up in the not too distant future, but we're going to change the style of it and try and run it all year round so that we can get even more people. And we're going to open it up to as many people in the world as possible to help more people get the skills they need to be able to do the open source software engineering or production engineering fellowship. And what about fellows who applied for the Summer Explorer track? Don't worry about you folks. We're automatically going to move you folks into this new, New Explorer program. It might have its name changed to be confirmed, but we'll be running that probably at the end of June, July sort of time. And we'll automatically move all your applications over and move you over so you won't forget anything. But we will be reviewing your applications the same as we have been. And so if we think you're suitable for one of the more advanced tracks, then we will definitely make sure to kind of make sure you get moved over there. But don't worry too much about that. We'll definitely make sure that people who are doing the Explorer track are not left out, because as someone who was as some of you know, I was heavily involved in it, and I think it's incredibly valuable to watch people go from zero to hero. In fact, on Monday we had the fellowship graduation, and I highly recommend you go and listen to Kez, who is one of our Explorer fellows. She did a talk on She did a speech on how it changed her life, and I think Robbie, you watched it too, and it was really, really, really emotional. I would highly recommend you go and check that out. Is Robbie continuing to work from home? Yes, Robbie is currently in his house and will be until he's allowed into the office.
I think the official guidance here is that we're planning to return to the office on the 1st of July, but it's going to be a very slow phased return. It's not like 1st of July. And that's in the UK anyway, right? It varies all around the world.
Oh yeah.
It's a
yes,
slow...
it must be complicated. I'm glad I'm not I'm not like the person in charge of a big company who's like in charge of opening the offices. Like that is not a job I want right now.
That's a big logistical challenge. I know.
Like, can I bring how many people into the office? And if so, how are we going to do that? And like, oh yeah, honestly. ASMR was lit. I'm cool. So Robbie, jumping back to some questions I had lined up for you. So you said you had like a previous internship or your placement year. In the UK, we call them placement years. I think some countries call them sandwich years.
The UK sometimes calls them sandwich years. Like,
yeah, I don't really. I think it's less common in the States to do placement year. It's more common to do internships, whereas in the UK, it's very common for a university to basically just go do a placement year. That's all you need. Off you go, right? They don't. Universities never really pressured me to go do internships. A lot of my friends didn't really understand because the universities never really talked about it. Whereas in the US, it's like universities like, you must do an internship or else you will not pass your degree. It's like, what?
It's crazy.
So yeah, Robbie, what can people do to help themselves stand out? And kind of added to that, what did you do to make yourself stand out from the crowd? Obviously, because you're now hired at Amazon, and I think a lot of people know from the audience that no one just gets hired from Amazon by just waking up in the morning and rolling out of bed. It's not a simple process, and I know you had quite an interview process too to get in.
Yeah, I did. I can definitely talk about that application process a bit, actually. One thing that's really important to Amazon is this concept of the leadership principles. So if you've not heard of these, just head to Google, type in Amazon leadership principles. There's 14 of them, I believe. And they're essentially our guiding principles for how we work and how we operate as an organization. Some examples are bias for action. So, we want to make sure we're actually jumping in and working on stuff. Ownership is another one, right? We all take responsibility for stuff. Frugality is one. Don't be wasteful with money or time or resources. Think big, right? Dive deep. There's loads and loads of them. And the reason I mention them is because when I did my interviews, and indeed for most interviews at Amazon that are corporate, there is a huge focus on these leadership principles.
Oh, look at this. Someone's found the principles.
That is excellent. That's what we like to see. So when I went to my interviews, I did 4 interviews back to back. They call it the loop. So it's 4 interviews, and I'd say 85% of the questions I were asked were soft skills and professional skills, and questions based around these leadership principles rather than technical questions, which kind of caught me out a bit, right? Because you hear a lot about, it's all leak code questions, you're whiteboarding stuff, all these kinds of things. Because my role is consultant and not just a software engineer, I have there's a lot of assessment and evaluation of my ability to work with customers and work with clients. Because it's quite people-facing. But even in the engineering roles, there's still a view on the leadership principles because you have to work with other people within Amazon, right? And so every question I'm asked is essentially measuring or trying to measure how closely or how well I adhere to these leadership principles in my day-to-day work. And what this all comes down to is it wasn't like I sat down and prepared, for the next 6 months of my life, I'm going to focus on these Amazon leadership principles. It's more about measuring my soft skills, and because my soft skills are ones that I'd kind of developed over time, right, throughout my whole university experience, through extracurricular activities, that set me up quite well for those interviews. And when I talk about the soft skills, we're talking about things like your teamwork, public speaking, communication, both written and spoken, your ability to handle conflict, your organization, all this kind of stuff that's good people skills, good business skills, but not necessarily good coding skills, because the coding and stuff you learn as you go along in the job. Now, those soft skills I was able to develop with a bunch of different things actually at university. Obviously, the placement year was part of it because you're working on a team and you're working with other software developers. But also, we talked earlier, Will, about hackathons. I'd spent some time working with MLH. I organized a hackathon at my own university. The hackathon was called DurHack. I did that for 3 years. And I was president of the Computing Society as well. And so all these things helped to develop those soft skills. And they, I think, are what help you to stand out, particularly in a community where people are, very focused on their coding skills, which is awesome, right? You do need those strong technical skills. But if you want to stand out, being able to stand up and be a confident speaker, or being happy to just get up and give a presentation, or all this kind of stuff, really helps give you a little bit of an advantage over the rest of the crowd.
Yeah, and something else that I want to add on to that is the soft skill I gained from helping, mentoring people at hackathons, helping people with, mentoring people, going up on stage, talking to people I don't know. It makes interviews so much easier because you can confidently talk about yourself because you're better at speaking to people you don't know. You're better at speaking off the cuff, and those soft skills are really valuable for applying to jobs because you get so into the technical side of things, which is what I was doing at the start of uni. I was getting really into the technical skills. As soon as I got better at my soft skills, interviewing people became so much easier. Like, getting interviewed. Nowadays, I interview people, I know. Look at me go. But having those soft skills made it just a lot less intimidating because I knew how to talk off the cuff. I did a university demo last week. I had to demo my work to the thing, Now, I know the person I was demoing to wasn't super familiar with the project, and so it was really important that I got the point across of why, right? And as a result, I got really good feedback because I was able to explain very clearly what I was doing in a very short period of time. Which a couple of years ago I would have just rambled and realized that if you had no idea what I was talking about, which was a hackathon project specifically, and you don't know what a hackathon is, you're gonna just look at me and go, I'm missing a lot of context here. And so those soft skills are incredibly important, and like you said, Robbie, it's really, really helped you.
I think as well that communication point is a really interesting one, right? Because like I said, there's kind of two key parts to it. There's your spoken communication, your ability to clearly talk about something with another human being, gauge their reaction and adapt how complex the idea is or whatever. And then your written communication as well. Now, this is more than just like spelling and grammar and like how good your English is. It's about how clearly can you get across an idea to someone who doesn't understand much of it. And a great way you can develop your own kind of writing skills is just by writing a README document for every single project that you do. As soon as I start a new repository, one of the first things I do is make a README, and I write in it like quick start instructions. Step 1, npm install. Step 2, npm start. Right? Even if it's just that. Just something that gets you used to writing A, technically, and then B, just like writing instructions for another person to consume. Again, these are the little things that I always see people miss, right? You look at someone's code sample or something like this, and it's like, this is great, but a couple of these little tweaks would go a long way to improving it. And again, helps you stand out.
One of the things we look at for when we are reviewing applications to the fellowship is you'll submit a code sample, and we generally look to see, how polished is this? Is there a README? Can I... a good thing with the soft skills is, can I look at this for a minute and understand what the project does? Or do I have to really dig around for it for an hour to understand? And so some projects have a README that just beautifully explains exactly what the project does and why they built it. And it gives you some brief instructions on how to run it. And from an interviewer's perspective, that's really, really nice, really, really good. And not just at the fellowship, right? Other companies who want code samples or have a look at your GitHub profile, if they can see that you're really good at writing documentation about your own projects, then they're going to be over the moon, because we all know how much people are rubbish at how bad people are at writing documentation in the industry. I don't want to call out any names, but there's a big tech company who... their documentation for my project was definitely a little challenging, and I would appreciate if you improved it, but I won't call out any names.
Oh, man.
Oh, dear. Honestly, soft skills are incredibly important, and I would highly recommend just if you get the chance to try and do a workshop at your local university, or the chance to do a talk on something, even if it's just a beginner workshop on React, or a beginner workshop on getting started with Python, something that you may be super familiar with but others won't. Trust me, my first workshop I did was terrible, absolutely terrible. The slides were okay, I hadn't really practiced them, and the live demo was complete rubbish because I hadn't really thought about, I built a project, it wasn't exciting to watch though, completely, the soft skills there were very bad.
Live demos are really hard to do.
Oh yeah, honestly. And so I learned how I could script blocks of the code, and so how I could basically focus on what I was saying and the structure of the demo, and all I had to do was basically paste in functions and then like glue them together because all the code was written. It meant I never made any typos because, well, all the code is written. I've already tested it. And I basically just have a script of like the aliases. So you know when you're typing and like VS Code gives you like autocomplete. I basically had like a couple of them where I came up with like aliases of what to type for the autocomplete to work. And so I basically had like a running show of like the what did what. So I could quickly go, okay, now I'm moving on to how to add a button. Here's the logic for adding a button. And someone just mentioned in chat actually, MLH Show and Tell helped with those. So something that the fellows get to do for those of you who are not fellows and are interested to learn a little more is that fellows do a show and tell every week. Well, not quite like that. What I mean is each week a fellow in a pod will get a chance to do a show and tell on a topic of their choice. And so you get some fellows doing something on, you know, I just got recently learned how to use React. And so here's my findings and, you know, here's what I found and what I learned from it. And it shares with other people who maybe don't know React. And for those who do, it's kind of interesting and insightful to kind of reflect on how beginners get started because they're so far down that track of knowing React. It's like, oh, completely forgot like how the initial hurdles that people get stuck on. Yeah. And as a result, just practicing talking to 10 people is incredibly beneficial to them. And something I'm going to be trialing in the summer is getting fellows to spend each week, one fellow will run the stand-up. So each week a fellow will have a chance of running the stand-up, which gives them the chance of having to, you know, ask questions, kind of go around the group. And yeah. Someone asks, is this stream about fellowship questions? Yep, we're basically talking about how you can get started in your careers and how the MLH Fellowship can help that. If you have any questions about the upcoming fellowships, then feel free to put those in the chat. But if you're also just interested to hear about how Robbie got started at AWS, then hang around and we'll be going right into that. Yeah. But yeah, the show and tells are really beneficial because we get people who basically, you know, they want to talk about some obscure thing like welcome to Rust. I know nothing about Rust, but I'm sure it'll be insightful. Maybe welcome to Docker. Maybe welcome to some framework they love, but no one else loves. And, you know, it's really interesting to see these things. So yeah, if you show and tells are incredibly beneficial. We do a bunch of other stuff too that help people too. Now, Robbie, talking a little bit more about you at the AWS. Before we jump into that,
this is true. Like one of the first things you told me when we got to know each other was like, "Oh, I'm writing this Discord bot. I'm writing Discord bots."
I wrote a lot of Discord bots at the fellowship, and I'm going to write some less in the summer. I'm going to keep writing code this summer. I've got a few ideas to try and like make fellows' lives a little bit easier.
Nice.
Only a few small projects. I mean, all the code I do, right, is never like big sophisticated things. That's what the engineering team at MLH does. My things are just like a little quality of life things for myself that make my life a little bit easier, make your life a little bit easier. For example, the Discord bots. But yeah, so Robbie, you work at AWS. You've been there for a good most part of the year now.
8 months, getting on for 9 months, I think. Yeah. That is a scary thought. Still feel like the new guy.
So, what department do you work in, and what does that department do?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I'm a graduate consultant within AWS. So I work in the professional services branch, which I think is the most kind of generic sounding name, like professional services. What does that mean? It's essentially consulting, right? And professional services, also known as Proserv, as we like to call it internally, is a huge global enterprise, really. And it's every time a company or an organization is trying to build something on AWS, they can engage with Proserv, and then use our consulting services to kind of help them build onto AWS, help them migrate their applications to the cloud, and all this kind of stuff, rather than just trying to do it alone. And a lot of how we engage with businesses is actually with like what we call an adoption incentive as well.
Okay.
So part of it is, you'll pay us and we'll come and give you our time and work with that. But the adoption incentive is where, rather than it being like a standard consulting engagement where you pay like by the hour, it's like we'll actually just give you a couple of consultants for 6 months or however long you need to get your application migrated onto the cloud, because there's a long-term benefit for Amazon from that as well, and it leads to a great experience for the customer because they're actually getting these like experts working with them to help them migrate their applications. So that's a lot of how we operate, and day to day I'm spending majority of my time, maybe 80% of my time, with customers, writing code or on meetings, just working out, almost advising and delivering on how they can migrate to the cloud.
Interesting. I was going to ask you if you could define consulting, because for those of you who've maybe mostly done programming, consulting might seem like a bit of a mystery word, but as you said, it's basically helping clients, people who want to move things to the cloud, understand how to do that. Because if someone in, like, let's say I work at a company, I mean, a good example would be I want to move my university project from a Raspberry Pi onto the cloud. Now, if anyone's ever looked at the cloud, for example, I opened the Google Cloud dashboard, for example, and I'm like, what on earth are the names of all these things, and what one do I want to use, and how can I best utilize it? Like, what the heck is Google Cloud Run, and like, what is an EC2, and I mean, EC2 is an Amazon thing, but how do I what do I do with all of these things, and how do I know where best to put my thing, And so that's where the consultants can come in and go, let's understand your requirements, what your project does, and we can basically help you, for one, migrate it over to it, and also like make sure that it's going to best utilize the cloud to, ideally cost you less and be more reliable, because the cloud does make things more reliable, but if your code's rubbish, still not going to make it any more reliable. The cloud doesn't make it robust, right? Like, it makes it a little bit more robust, but if your code's rubbish, it's not going to handle like millions of users.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely kind of immediate cost benefits to moving to the cloud, but also I think it affords you flexibility long term, right? Let's say you're a big retailer, like Amazon, perhaps, right? You're a big retailer, and you get a lot of extra traffic on your website around Christmas time or the holidays, because everyone's going and doing the holiday shopping. You probably need
pandemic when no one leaves the house.
Exactly, right? It's a pandemic and everyone's suddenly ordering online. You need to be able to scale up your application, even if that's just like your online checkout system, very rapidly and reliably. And if you're doing this on premises, like if you're hosting your website and your application yourself, you need to go out and buy some extra servers. You need to hire some people to set up those servers. You need to hire someone to patch those servers and maintain them and keep them up to date. You need kind of a whole team of people, right? And then if the capacity goes down, people go back to shopping in stores. Now you've got all these extra servers that you don't need, right? So you're a bit stuck in terms of scalability. You've got a lot of upfront cost and investment, and you can't adapt quickly. The cloud kind of removes a lot of those barriers, because if you need your application to run on 1,000 instances instead of 10, you can just do that. You just change the number to 1,000, right? And of course, you get charged accordingly. But because you only pay for what you use, it's a pay-as-you-go model. It usually works out more cost-effective. And then in terms of the flexibility, the fact that you're now on the cloud and you can easily scale up like that, generally as part of doing that, you've almost re-architected and redesigned your application to be cloud native. So cloud is not just like a bunch of virtual machines and servers. There's so many more services in place to handle that.
I've been lied to this entire time.
When you talk about EC2 and stuff, which is basically virtual machines in the cloud, that's almost like old school, right? Like the new cool stuff is Lambda, like serverless functions where you don't even think about the server. For storage, you just got S3, it's like Google Drive or something, right? You just throw things at it and it just handles it as much as you need. So in terms of when you're migrating your application or building your application natively for the cloud, when you're doing that, you're setting yourself up for success as a business in terms of being able to then later adapt and modify your application to whatever's required. And if you link that back to what you might do day to day as a developer, it makes your life easier because you're not stuck using like old code that was written 15 years ago. No one really knows how it works, because it is so modern and it's designed to be flexible and modular. You talked earlier about Docker, Will, right? Everything is in lots of little bite-sized chunks. That's kind of the way forward, because it's good for everybody wins to the cloud, basically.
Nice. Now, we had a question in chat. I think it's really interesting. Someone says, "What are the startup versus grad program pros and cons?" Now, this is very interesting because it really depends on who you are. I would say, if you are someone who is, very independent, you like to do a lot of your own things, and you are someone who doesn't necessarily need much guidance. I'm one of those people, for example. I like to be able to just sort of get on with things and do lots and lots of things. So a startup environment, you end up wearing lots of hats. You end up having to kind of like adapt. You end up doing things that maybe you aren't expecting to do. Like, for example, sometimes I do customer support. It's not my pro, but so it's just kind of being able to kind of fit where is needed. And as a result, I've gained a lot of variety of experiences, and it's helped me kind of understand what I want to do. However, if you're someone who most people probably fall into this when they're graduating uni. I'm a very kind of unique case here, but a lot of people when they're graduating uni have no idea what they want to do. I mean, I still don't know, but they have no idea really what they want to do. They don't really, they need that kind of guidance and mentorship. And a grad program is really, really interesting because it's not as simple as just getting a job somewhere and working at that company for some time. A grad job is basically where they'll train you for a year or so. They'll rotate you between departments potentially. It really depends on the company, but they'll basically put you through a training program. So the idea is that you get a chance to kind of get your hands on lots of different things. You get a chance to kind of see what you like. And at these bigger scale companies, it's really nice because instead of working on one thing or another, you get the chance to kind of try lots of things in lots of different departments potentially. I know that a previous company that someone I know was going to work at was going to get the chance that every 3 months they'd rotate between department, and at the end of it they get to kind of like to say which one they'd like to work in for the foreseeable future. But then some grad programs let you kind of work somewhere for a year and then maybe you could move or you can stay, and so it gives you all of these opportunities, which is kind of like changing jobs but without the kind of risk of changing jobs, of having to apply somewhere, pray that someone likes you and that you can get in, and then hoping after all of that process that you actually like it and it was worth that hassle, right? Whereas if you're staying inside of a company, you don't have to worry about the money thing. You can continue living your life, but you still get that chance to kind of get your hands dirty in lots of different things. And so grad programs the reason grad programs exist is because, well, funnily enough, university students don't often learn the skills they need doing their degrees. They don't get hands-on with practical skills. I was surprised at how many people at my university don't know Git, and I was just like, what? But it's just not taught. It's more theoretical, which makes sense, but not necessarily useful for some environments in the real world. And so the grad program basically kind of takes you from what you know and makes sure that everyone gets to the same page, because as well, universities teach different things. And so some universities, for example, I've been learning how to write Android apps, but some universities won't ever do that. I think, Robbie, you probably never covered Android apps at your university.
Yeah, we never did any app development at my university. There's a lot of theory, and the theory is important because it gives you that foundation, right? We talked earlier about how you always have to learn new things. Having a strong foundation enables you to learn those new things. But if you look at the actual content that I was taught, 90% of what I learned in my degree, I don't use in my job, right? There's a little bit about databases. I learned how to use Git at the first hackathon I went to, actually.
Same.
I think there's not much else from my course that I used and that I still use day to day.
Yeah. And something that someone kind of taught me why that's like is, if you think of school, right, they're teaching you the next stuff to get you to the next step. And that next step is not what you necessarily think it is, right? If you're like at high school or doing your GCSEs or A-levels in the UK, the whole point of doing your GCSEs, like the reason they teach you those things is because then if you want to continue going on, the next step, A-levels, will use that fundamental knowledge. And then the same for degree. And degrees, funnily enough, are universities. And universities, outside of like teaching students stuff, do research, right? They do research and they have researchers do all sorts of really cool stuff. And the idea is the university is giving you the skills so that you can go and do research. If you want to go do a PhD, it teaches you the skills on how to maybe go down those more theoretical paths and so on. And that's why they cover theoretical stuff. It's like, but it's never used in industry. What's the point? That's not the point. The point is, if you want to do a PhD, that stuff is incredibly useful. The maths you might learn, you may think, I don't use that in a job. Yes, but in a PhD, you might use that loads. But the reason they let you cover lots of stuff is so that you can then work out what you do a PhD in. If you think about it, it's like a big pyramid. As you get towards the top of the pyramid, the amount of like areas you cover get narrower and narrower until you do a PhD and it's on like a really specific topic, right? Really, really specific. Whereas a degree, you kind of cover everything. Like I've done networking recently and Android dev and teaching in schools. Like that's all very different. Now, someone asks as well, what kind of degree is needed for this job? To be honest, most jobs looking for like software developers, consultants, and that kind of stuff, if you have some sort of like STEM degree, that'd be pretty chill. But if you've got some previous experience, that will also really, really stand out. If you get a few years of experience and you have like a change in career, some companies will, like some of the kind of bigger companies with more kind of strict requirements, mostly because they get so many applicants. It's just like a very kind of standard process. But kind of smaller companies will be a lot more open to, because they haven't got that sort of structure and that volume of applications, they're a lot more open to the individual person because they have that capacity, right? And so if you've got some previous experience and you've got and you fit in the company very well, then so if you're someone who maybe doesn't have a degree, have a look at some smaller companies because they they care a little less about that, because the people they hire is like, that person's going to be responsible for a lot of things. And so we need that person to be good at those things and not necessarily tick the boxes, right? So in your experience, do you think a person's working on their own or in the MLH Fellowship can get AWS Solutions Architect certificates after Cloud Practitioner? I actually know nothing about these AWS Solutions stuff.
I could probably answer this one. So the Solutions Architect certification is almost the go-to default like technical AWS certification. Cloud Practitioner is a great place to start if you're not familiar with it. It's essentially you're demonstrating an understanding of the services offered by AWS and kind of how they can link together, or how you might choose which ones to use. And then Solutions Architect is you're demonstrating you have enough ability to be able to use those services. So in my case, on the graduate program, our requirements are actually that within the first 12 months of starting at Amazon, you have to get all 3 associate level certifications, which includes that Solutions Architect one. And then additionally, we have to get 1 professional or 1 specialty AWS certification. So in case of the Solutions Architect certification, I think it absolutely is something which you can teach yourself and you don't need industry experience for. When I did it, I failed it the first time, right? Very common. But when I did it the second time, I was able to pass it because I did a bit more studying and I learned about how these different services work. Sure, it helps, right? If you're in a job and you've spent a year working with this stuff, that really helps. But you can definitely sit down and just learn the content yourself. There's loads and loads of resources online for it, and then you can definitely nail that. I think in terms of the MLH Fellowship, like the fellowship is not just about technical skills, right? Well, it's also about giving people the ability to learn and teach themselves, and I think that's what comes in really useful as well.
Which goes on to my next question for you. So we kind of talked about what you get up to on a day-to-day sort of, we kind of rushed on what your job involves, but how does Amazon allow you to grow and learn more? As in, you've just talked about like you get to do the certifications and stuff, but one of the things we talked about is grad programs, right? They aren't just a matter of, because companies, if you think a company's going to hire a grad and expect them to be like producing, really incredible work on day one, like think again, they hire the grad as it's like a development thing, because in 20 years time all their current engineers will retire. And they need to replace that talent with people who are better, hopefully, right, and able to adapt to these new technologies. Because we go back 20 years ago, cloud didn't exist, and so it's a thing everyone's had to learn. And in 20 years time, God knows what will be around, right, and what we'll be doing. We'll be putting things onto Mars and hosting all of our servers on Mars or something. And so how does Amazon allow you to grow and learn more, especially as a graduate consultant?
Yeah, this comes down to, I think, what we were saying earlier about like almost the difference between a graduate program versus just a random job at a startup. In the case of the graduate program I'm on, there is a huge amount of structured career growth opportunities. Right, there's simple things like the certifications. They'll give you the budget and the teaching materials you need to just teach yourself, go away and do them. And then in terms of like the soft skills and the professional development, I think within my first month of starting at Amazon, my manager sat down. He said, right, let's start planning a promotion for 2 years time, and start capturing information about how I'm working with customers and what I'm building to back up my promotion when I go for it. There's a little bit of a saying, and the idea is that if you're not immediately learning something on some project, then you need to switch to a different project. If you're not spending your time learning, then you're wasting that time. You're not being very frugal with it. So you always want to be pushing yourself. I think the phrase we use is get comfortable being uncomfortable, because you're always a little bit out of your depth. But you just kind of have to deal with it. You have to step up and handle it. And then because you have this amazing environment around you of all these incredibly intelligent people, you're literally working with like the best tools in the world for this stuff and the best people in the world. So many opportunities for me to learn from people, right? On that graduate program, I've got a mentor, I've got a buddy as well, and my manager. So there's already a structured mechanism there for me to get feedback and support on my work. And people are very open to helping as well, right? If I find someone who's an expert in a certain, the specific details of one AWS service, they're always happy for me to go and reach out to them and say, hey, I need your advice on this. And they will teach me. So there's frequently these touch points and opportunities to get kind of measured in terms of how you're doing. And give you a growth plan to make sure you're always leveling up, you're always raising the bar.
Awesome stuff. Looks like we got a couple questions in chat. We'll cover those at the end. Don't you worry. If you got any more questions about the MLH specifically, let me know. I'm more than happy to answer them, and I'm excited to see as many of you apply to the fellowship this summer. Now, Robbie, like you mentioned, where can Amazon take your career? And as you mentioned, they kind of like outline kind of the next couple of years for you, make it very clear to you where you're going to be in 2 years' time, something that not everywhere will do. And so it's very useful for you because you know exactly the skills you're going to learn, the direction you're going in. It helps you understand when you're not going in the right direction. It's very common at university, right? Students will never know if they think they're going in the wrong direction. It's common when people are starting their careers to, funnily enough, not know what they're doing. And so having that guidance is incredibly valuable.
Yeah. In terms of where my career can go, right? Like you said, the graduate program is good because I know exactly what's expected of me in the first 12 months, which truthfully is like not a huge amount, right? Like you start, you don't know anything about AWS, you don't know anything about consulting, and then your second year in, like you stand on your own 2 feet a bit more, and then the goal after that for me is to get promoted from level 4 to level 5. Which basically means I have a bit more say, I have a bit more responsibility, I get a nice substantial pay rise as well when that happens.
Always nice.
Which is always nice. That growth over the first year, right? Like officially on my graduate program anyway, the first 3 months are purely onboarding, right? It's time to just learn about Amazon, learn about what consulting means, get your AWS certifications, maybe shadow on a couple of projects just to see what it's like. And then after that, you stand on your own 2 feet a bit more. You definitely get thrown into the deep end, right? You get thrown on a project and like, yeah, here's Robbie, he's good at this particular part of cloud. I'm like, okay, now I need to learn how to be good at this particular part of cloud. And then, in my second year, I hopefully have a bit more experience and I'm able to support myself a bit more. Beyond that, it's definitely kind of nebulous. Where do you go after you completed that structured program? And I think really that it's like what I said earlier about always wanting to learn. As soon as you feel like you're not learning something new, that's when you need to go out of your way to change something, find a different project, find a different company, find a different team, this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
to
definitely.
always be leveling up. I don't think I'll be kind of in the same role for the rest of my life. I definitely want variety, but for where I am in my career at the minute, this is a great place to start because it teaches me a lot of the professional skills and the soft skills. There's a question here in the chat about deadlines, right? Deadlines, oh god, absolute nightmare. You think you have deadlines hard at uni. It doesn't change when you get a job. You still have deadlines. You still have stuff to do. Yeah.
You've got to keep those deadlines you see on the fellowship website? Yeah, they're my deadlines. Just making sure I get enough fellows before the 7th of June.
The deadlines never really change, and it's the same with the exams, right? I thought I'd finish uni, finish my exams. No, I've done 6 or 7 exams now for my certifications, and it keeps on going.
I don't rate that.
Never really disappear.
If MLH starts making me do exams, I'm going to be very unimpressed.
I know, but on the plus side, on the plus side, I now have more hexagon badges, which I can stick in my email signature.
Oh, that is actually really cool. So, hang on, I have an idea. Hang on.
Are you going to get your?
My camera doesn't turn enough because it's blocked, but.
This better be Goodwill.
There was a card on it. So,
Oh, yes.
Oh, hang on.
Look at it. That's
Those
awesome.
hexagons, right? These are hexagons you get at hackathons, and they're awesome. I've got a few pins from Major League Hacking as well. A few wristbands. I've got Hack the Midlands at the top, Hack Cambridge, Hack the Burr. Yeah, I've got loads more stickers from digital hackathons in a drawer. When I move house, I'm going to get another frame because obviously this one's a little bit full. And so, Robbie, fun fact, I put it on upside down so the hook's on the wrong side. But yeah, Robbie, you now have the same thing, but even though you don't go to hackathons anymore and you're not a student, you now collect these AWS hexagons.
Exactly, like the AWS ones are hexagons as well. So I've got those in my email signature, I've got them on my LinkedIn, and they're kind of like a badge of honor, right? It's almost a natural next step. After collecting loads of hackathon stickers, now I'm collecting professional job stickers and badges. I don't know where it goes after that, but it's nice. It's nice to have them. I like the shiny, fun thing. Oh,
I love the stickers. I need to. At the moment, it's just resting against. There's this unit behind me. Hang on, Robbie, I'm gonna kick you out of the way. Oh, actually, I can show people. There you go. And so I have this backdrop, which will be a lot better when I move house. But I want to put it on the wall. At the moment, it's just resting because I'm in a student house, and this wall. Let's just say there's cracks above the ceiling and I don't trust it.
You told me about this. Like, I'm slightly terrified that one day on one of your streams, the ceiling's just gonna cave in.
Yeah, I had to move out in the summer because, yeah, it wasn't looking good.
Oh, jeez.
But yeah, someone says, "Are you giving away this stream?" I am not giving away my my hexagons. That is nearly 2.5 years of hard work right there, my friends. If you want more hexagons, then hackathons. It's honestly the only way. Awesome. I think we'll wrap things up there. I'm going to wrap up a little bit with more about the fellowship, where give everyone more information they need. But Robbie, thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate it. Hopefully people found that interesting about kind of what graduate life is all it's and what life at AWS
crazy,
is.
Right?
I know, right? Adult life. Oh, I don't want to go there.
No, it's been a pleasure. It's been really good. I've enjoyed talking about what we offer. You know, if you're interested, please find me on LinkedIn. I'm sure I can get Will to put my LinkedIn in the chat, and then hit me up, connect with me, and speak to you in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Robbie. We'll talk to you soon. Well, thank you so much, Robbie. I really do appreciate you coming along. It's been awesome stuff. Robbie just sent me his LinkedIn, and see if I can copy and paste it and put it in the chat. If you want to connect with Robbie, he put LinkedIn with a capital L though. What a peasant. There you go. Hopefully that works. Before we wrap things up here, I just want to say, if you're interested in applying to the MLH Fellowship, you should go over to fellowship.mlh.io, where you'll be able to find out all the information about our 3 upcoming programs this summer. We've got the open source track, the software engineering track, and the production engineering track, which is the new one that we just announced this week for folks in Mexico, the US, and Canada. If you want to find out more information about those, head over to the website, and you can also get in touch if you've got any questions. Now, we'll be starting the program on the 7th of June, running all the way to the 30th of August. I realize I said those dates in the UK format. Deal with it. And we'd love to see as many people apply, and we can't wait to invite hopefully maybe twice as many fellows as we haven't previously. The fellowship's growing at a rapid pace, and we can't wait to welcome you all on. That is all from me, folks. If you do have any more questions, let me know in chat. If you've got any questions, let me know in chat. I'll have a quick look at it now, but I think that is everything. Thanks, folks, again for coming along. Really do appreciate it, and you'll find us on here doing some more live streams in the not too distant future. All right, thanks, folks, and we'll talk to you all soon. Bye.